Hey Goblin, you've been really practicing those war drums.
I'll bring the generic goblin noise!
Hey gang, and welcome to today's bonus video, brought to you by Into the AM. Into the AM has been a great sponsor for my channel, providing me with these awesome t-shirts that I love to wear and basically live in at this point. You can just ask my wife. Right now, I'm thrilled to announce that they've got their biggest sale of the year for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, running until November 30th. You can save between 30 to 80% off graphic tees, plain tees, long sleeves, everything you could possibly think of. They've got some amazing prints, some beautiful styles, and basically something for everyone. Whether it's fantasy or sci-fi, I'm sure you'll be able to find a great holiday gift for someone you care about. What's even cooler though, is in addition to all those savings, you can actually use my promo code MTGMudsta to get a further 10% off. That means instead of the 30 to 80%, you're getting between 40 to 90%, which is just insane savings considering the quality of these t-shirts. Whether you're shopping for the holidays or looking to upgrade your own wardrobe, Into the AM has something for everyone, so be sure to click my link down below to check it out. In today's game, we have Jalbert, Dom, and Mathieu rejoining me with some brand new decks. First up, Jalbert is playing his 13th Doctor and pairing her with the Yasmin. He keeps Forest, Fiery Islet, Jeska's Will, the 10th Doctor, Soul Ring, and Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter. Dom has built Hylda of the Icy Crown from Wild Devil Drain, keeping Mondrak, Glory Dominus, Force of Will, Retreat from Coralhelm, Mystical Tutor, Mana Crypt, Arid Mesa, and an island. Mathieu has also built a Doctor Who deck with Sergeant John Benton. He keeps Wild Defiance, Embiggen, Forest, Canopy Vista, Findhorn Elves, and a Bountiful Promenade. I am playing my Vishgraz deck, keeping Forest, Not Dead After All, Twilight Mire, Phyresis, Drown in Ichor, and an Overgrown Tomb. Jalbert wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws, playing a Forest, and casting Soul Ring. Dom draws and just plays an island. Mathieu has a Forest for turn and casts a Findhorn Elves. I draw and play a tapped Canopy Vista. Jalbert plays a mountain and then casts Yasmin. He then passes, and during his end step, Dom casts Mystical Tutor, going to find a Windfall, and then moves to his turn. Dom draws and plays out a Mana Crypt. He then casts Retreat to Coralhelm, and follows up with an island and scries one as it comes in. After that, he passes turn. Mathieu draws and plays a Bountiful Promenade. He then casts his commander, Sergeant John Benton, and he moves to combat. Surprisingly, Sergeant John has haste, and he swings him at Jalbert, who takes the hit, and they each get to draw 2 cards. Mathieu then moves to discard down to 7 as he passes to me. I draw and just play an Overgrown Tomb, which comes in tapped. Jalbert's turn has him drawing, and then activating Yasmin to exile his top card. It's a green slime, and he then casts a Jeska's Will, targeting Mathieu, and he gets to exile his top 3 and makes 7 red mana. He then uses some of it for a Sonic Screwdriver from the exiled cards, and then plays an island from hand. He then enchants it with a Wild Growth from exile. He then wraps things up with a Nature's Lore, going to find a Cinder Glade, and passing. Dom wins his Mana Crypt flipped, and draws. He then plays an Arid Mesa, and once that's out, casts Hylda and passes to Mathieu. Mathieu draws and plays Canopy Vista, and then casts his own Soul Ring. He follows up with a Wild Defiance and moves to combat. In response, Dom cracks the Arid Mesa, losing 1 to find a Prairie Stream, and as it comes in, taps down John with the Retreat to Coralhelm trigger. And Dom then pays the 1 to make a 4/4 elemental token with Hylda's ability. With nothing else, Mathieu passes. I draw and play an Undergrowth Stadium. I then tap 3 for Cultivate and pass while I'm searching for basics. Jalbert draws and activates Yasmin, exiling a Chaos Warp from the top of his library. He then casts his other commander, the 13th Doctor, and follows up with a Sword of Forge and Frontier. He then casts Chaos Warp and targets Retreat to Coralhelm. Jalbert gets a +1/+1 counter on Yasmin thanks to the 13th Doctor's ability, and Dom then shuffles in his Retreat and reveals an arcane signet off the top, which comes into play. Jalbel then plays a Temple of Mystery, scrying 1 and passing. Dom loses his Mana Crypt flip and takes 3, and then draws for turn. He plays an Adhikar Wastes, and then casts Mondarch. Moving to combat, Dom swings Hylda and the 4/4 token at Mathieu, and he takes the hit. In his post-combat main phase, Dom then plays out Hammers of Moradin and passes. Mathieu draws and goes to combat. He swings John at me and casts Invigorate on it, which gains me 4 life. And then casts Embiggen on Sergeant John Benton, pumping up even further. His commander also has +6/+6 from the Wild Defiance triggers, and I take a total of 16 commander damage, but Mathieu and I do draw 16 cards. In his second main phase, Mathieu plays a Summer Bloom, and then plays out Reliquary Tower, Reflecting Pool, and a Forest. He follows that up with an Exploration, and then plays Gemstone Caverns. Once that's out, he taps enough for Bastion Protector, and passes to me. I draw, and play out Godless Shrine untapped and take 2. I then play out Soul Ring, and then cast Nature's Lore to go and find a Temple Garden, putting it into play untapped. I then cast Vraska's Fall, and each opponent sacrifices a creature and gets a poison counter. Before resolving his sacrifice, Jalbel activates Yasmin to exile his top card. And Mathieu also responds by casting Noxious Revival to put Invigorate on top of his library. I then finish things up with a Drown in Ichor and target Mondrak, and give everyone another poison counter. I then move to discard and pass turn. Jalbel draws and plays a Fiery Islet, and then casts Tavern Brawler that he'd exiled with Yasmin. He then puts a counter onto his Doctor, and equips her with the Swords of Forge and Frontier. Going to combat, he swings the Doctor at Dom, who takes the 5, and Jalbel exiles his top 2. He plays a Rockfall Vale as his second land for turn, and then casts Cultivate from exile, and puts a counter onto his Doctor, which I think in hindsight he couldn't do because it has pro-green. He then follows up by casting Surge of Brilliance, drawing 2, and passing. Dom loses his flip and draws. He plays an island, and then casts Windfall. Mathieu responds by casting Heroic Intervention before it resolves, since he'll lose it anyway, and we then all draw a bunch of cards thanks to Mathieu's huge hand. Dom then plays a Soul Ring, and then a Mana Vault. And finally a Rhystic Study. After that, Dom then moves to combat, and swings the Hammer of Moradin at me, which has him making myriad copies, attacking Jalbel and Mathieu. He taps down all their creatures on the board, and we each take 3. With nothing else, Dom passes. Mathieu draws and plays a Plains. He then casts Maul of the Skyclaves and equips on it to his commander. Moving to combat, he swings in at Dom and invigorates on him before damage, which gives him an additional +7/+7 from the Invigorate and Wild Defiance trigger. Dom then takes 13, and both he and Mathieu draw 13 cards as well. After combat, Mathieu plays an Exotic Orchard, and then casts Regrowth and brings back his Ram through. He then casts it and targets John and Hylda. Dom in response casts Teferi's Protection to save her, and Mathieu then passes turn. I draw and play a Command Tower. I then cast a Mere Convert, followed by a Bloated Contaminator, and just pass after that. Jalbel's upkeep has him exiling a Frostboil Snarl to the Tavern Brawler, which pumps his commander by nothing, and he then draws for turn. He plays his own copy of Reliquary Tower, and then casts a Tally, Primal Conqueror. We all exile into a non-land card, with Jalbel casting Arachnoid Adaptation on his commander, which unfortunately in hindsight has protection from green. He then uses Beast Within on the Bastion Protector, and he casts Knight's Whisper, drawing 2 and losing 2. He declines to cast Dom's Supreme Verdict for obvious reasons, and Jalbel puts 2 +1/+1 counters onto a Tally and 1 onto the Doctor. Going to combat, he swings the Doctor at Mathieu for 7, who takes the hit. This has Jalbel exiling his top 2, and he gets to play a Command Tower from among them, and he then casts Throes of Chaos from his hand. He cascades into an Explorer, casting that and putting another counter onto one of his creatures, plus drawing a card. This allows him to play Path of Ancestry as an additional land, and he then wraps things up with an Impending Flux. This deals 5 to each of his opponents and each of our creatures, and with nothing else, Hylda passes. Dom wins his Crypt Flip and draws. He then plays Shire of Numbing Deaths, tapping down a tally for a turn, and gets to draw a card. He then plays a Tundra, and then casts Time of Ice, stunning John Benton. Moving to combat, Dom swings the Hammers of Moradin at me, and Hylda goes at Hylda, and the Myriad trigger resolves again, tapping down the Doctor as the only untapped creature on the board. We then each take our damage, and Dom pays 1 to make a 4-foil elemental token with Hylda, thanks to the hammers tapping something down. With nothing else, he passes. Mattia draws and plays Branchloft Pathway, and then a Windswept Heath, which he sacrifices, losing 1 to go and find a forest. He then plays Pair of Lost Dice, and rolls a Boxcar, gaining total mana value of 6 back to his hand. He then plays an Arachnoid Adaptation to untap John, and he goes to combat. He swings John at Dom and casts Embiggen on him, and Dom responds by casting Pongify. Mattia responds with Flawless Maneuvers though, and Dom then takes lethal damage, while Mattia gets to draw 19. After combat, Mattia then plays Azusa, and he plays 2 more lands, before casting an Invigorate again. He then casts Giant Growth and Mutagenic Growth on John, so that he can cast Ram Through on one of Hylda's creatures and take him out. Hylda then dies from the ramming, and Mattia passes. During his end step, I cast Whispers on the Dross on John to proliferate Mattia's poison counter, and then cast Vampiric Tutor, losing 2 to go and find a card to put on top. I draw and cast Demonic Tutor in my main phase. I tutor for a card, and then cast Natural Restoration, proliferating the poison, and returning to hand Vraska Betrayal's Sting. I then cast her, paying 2 life instead of a mana thanks to the Phyrexian mana cost, and once she's out, I downtick her to attempt to make John into a treasure token. Sadly, Mattia is ready with a Vines of Vastwood to protect him, and knowing when I'm beat, I scoop it up to an impending lethal attack next turn. And once more, I just want to thank today's sponsor, Into the AM. They've got some incredibly comfortable t-shirts with awesome designs, and right now you can get between 40 and right now you're able to save between 30 and 80% off their shirts. If you use my link or promo code MTGMudsta, if you use my promo code or the link below, which is MTGMudsta, you'll get an additional 10% savings on top of that. That'll save you between 40 and 90% on some of these amazing shirts, which are perfect for holiday gifts or to spruce up your wardrobe. Game review time. This video was 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 36 seconds. When Mathieu pulled out his Sergeant John Benton deck, I wasn't expecting much, and honestly I was pretty surprised to learn that the commander had haste built into it. I thought he'd have to work a lot more for it, but as you saw, between Wild Defiance and a few pump spells, people were dying left, right, and center. It was also really cool to see how many cards he was drawing, which works so well with the deck since you're losing so many pump spells, you really want to refill your hand. I think he was certainly right for taking out Dom first, as Hylda seems like the antithesis of his deck. I think honestly if that retreat hadn't been dealt with, Dom was going to be tapping down all of our creatures and not allowing us to do stuff, which is probably the right move. It was a tough decision for Hylda, despite the fact that he was drawing and exiling so many cards in his Doctor Who deck, to have to pick between Wild Defiance and the retreat to Coralhelm. In hindsight, I'm not entirely sure which was better. Unfortunately for us, my removal was not very helpful. After having played this game, I've since changed up some of the board wipes that were less focused on -1/-1 counters, and added some good old-fashioned Toxic Deluges and Damnations to help.